Shalom, Israel. First and foremost, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rechak, Wadash. Double honors to the apostles of GMS for teaching this truth, and peace and salutations for all the Alkim out there kicking this word in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so. Now back to the Wild Edible Herbs series. Today we're focusing on red clover to start. And I imagine most of you know what red clover is. You know, if you ever look for a four-leaf clover out in a field and amongst thousands and thousands of three-leaf clovers and probably never found one. At least that's how it's been for me. I've never found a four-leaf clover. Anyhow, here's a couple shots of the red clover. The only thing you really need to pay attention to, I'll get into the pictures and explain that, but the leaves, they differ a little bit. Anyhow, the habitat. Habitats include fields, pastures, vacant lots, grassy areas along roadsides, weedy meadows, and on front and backyard lawns. You'll find this thing pretty much anywhere, especially in the lawns, as a lot of you probably already know. So the edible parts are the leaves. They can be tossed in salad. The preferable part of this edible plant is the flower, actually. The red clovers are the tastiest of all clovers, although it is recommended not to eat too many of these, as some people experience bloating. So there's your warning there. Don't get too crazy with the red clover flowers. So there's your typical three-leaf clover. If you have a hard time identifying that, notice that like lighter green streak in the center of the leaf. They're all going to have that pretty much. Sometimes it's kind of faint. And then notice here that the leaves, they're not as rounded in this picture. You got some more pointy. Get in there. Some pointier leaves, but it still has that faded green color in the center, that chevron shape. There's the flowers, unmistakable. There's nothing else that looks like a red clover flower. There's that more pointed leaf shape as opposed to the round one. There's another one. That light chevron color in the center of the leaf is kind of thin, so it's kind of hard to see there. You'll probably run into something like that, but nevertheless, it's going to have those three flowers, three leaves, and that round or pointy leaf shape, and it's going to grow it in clusters on the ground or wherever you find it. You're typically not going to find just one red clover growing. It's going to be in a cluster, a stand of these. Okay, next one we're going to look at sheep sorrel. Look at a couple of shots here when that image shows up. Now, I'm not too familiar with this plant. I know that just from studying the images, this might be a little bit harder, on the harder side to recognize, especially if it's not flowering. It's going to look like a lot of other typical weeds out there. So we'll do our best to help identify this. But let's read the distinguishing features here, see if that helps. Sheep sorrel is composed of a clump of arrow-shaped leaves growing as a rosette, which are joined underground by a creeping root system. In spring, each rosette forms a reddish, upright flower stem. The seed heads look like a miniature form of broad-leafed dock seed head, which is hardly surprising as the two species are closely related. This plant grows in pastures due to the creeping root system. Habitat. The plant is native to Europe and Asia, including British Isles. It was introduced to North America and grows in many other areas of the world. It is commonly found in acidic, sandy soils, in heaths and grassland. It particularly likes to grow in areas where blueberries can be found. Edible parts. The edible parts are the leaves. Leaves have a lemony, tangy, or nicely tart flavor. Leaves in small quantities can be eaten raw or cooked, used as thickeners in soups, dried and ground into a powder to use as a flour, or make into noodles. Oh, that's interesting. Seeds can be eaten raw or cooked. So here you have the sorrel, a plant standing by itself, and then it's kind of surrounded by other plants. So it's not going to grow, it doesn't look like it's going to grow in large clumps. It looks like it wants to be kind of isolated. Again, this is a plant that I'm not too familiar with, so this is a newer one to me. Notice those leaves though, the arrow-shaped leaves, those red flowers. There's a better shot of those red flowers. The leaves, looks like the stems will be a little red. And a little reddening on the leaves as well. And this is a much younger plant. You can tell it doesn't have the flower stalks on it. It's rather small compared to, I mean, even that. But this thing gets rather large compared to this very young plant here. Here's another young one. Doesn't have the red stems on the leaves, but notice the arrow-shaped leaf. And how they kind of grow out of that one center. They don't branch. The leaves don't grow on the branches. The leaves grow right out of the center of the plant. And you can even see that here on this larger one. The leaves aren't really growing up on those flower stalks too much. As they get up there, it's you can really, it's not the best picture actually. Let's see if I can get in there. There we go. You can kind of see some leaves growing up on those stalks, but for the most part, the leaves are going to be down at the bottom when it's in the flowering season. All right, on to the next here. Next one's going to be shepherd's purse. This site, it really likes you to spell it exactly how it's written on the site, how it's typed out on the site. Otherwise, it won't find it. So, I hope I got that spelling right. Nope. See, let's try that again. There we go. Some shot of the flowers there. Now I'll show you a picture, but that's those stalks are, there you go. That little heart-shaped pod there, that's the major identifier for shepherd's purse when it has the flowering stalks on it. But we'll get into that in the images. So habitat. Shepherd purse occurs throughout grain fields, waste areas, roadsides, gardens, and lawns. And I've seen some of these in lawns and parks, but usually when it's in a lawn or a park, you're not going to find that many. These things they're typically pretty small. You're not going to find a lot of meat on these plants, and especially in the parks, they're going to be sparse and pretty separated. So it is also common. It is also a common weed cultivated soil. Originally from Europe, shepherd purse now grows in countries worldwide. Edible parts. Shepherd's purse leaves can be eaten raw or cooked. Raw is healthier. Young leaves used before the plant flowers as tasty addition to salads. The leaves are a cress and cabbage substitute that becomes peppery with age. Probably a lot like arugula. The leaves are generally available all year round and can be dried for later use. The flowering shoots can be eaten as well. Shepherd's purse seeds can be used in a salad, but they're so tiny and fiddly you need patience to collect them. I wouldn't even bother. There's those little seed pods there. There's not that many. Like it says, fiddly. The root is also edible. Dried and ground up, it can be used as a ginger substitute. So now this is going to be interesting identifying. If it doesn't have that stalk on it, you're going to be looking at the leaves. And the leaves, they can be radically different from leaf to leaf. I mean, you're going to get some similarities. You can see this like serrated, not necessarily serrated, but separated leaf. I'll show you a diagram of the leaves. Here's a drawing here. So you have a leaf that's whole, and then let me get in there. You know, that's not actually the best drawing. But notice this, those there, the seed pods that are little heart shaped. You're not going to see any other plant like this. That's the largest identifier for a shepherd's purse. Is those seed pods. Come on, get out of there. Okay, there we go. Here's a little nice one with a lot of leaves on it. It's a lot of meat there. Again, these things don't get very large though. You're probably looking at a foot max, maybe 2 feet. At least from my experience, they don't get very tall. Notice those seed pods, that heart shape. So here's what I wanted to get into with the leaves, is that the leaves, I mean, look at these leaves. They're all so different. I mean, they have some similarities. We have here more serrated looking leaves. There's the seed pods down there. And then on the larger leaves, the leaves kind of open up a little bit. So that's going to be, if you don't have that seed pod on it, it might be a little bit of a challenge identifying those leaves, but just do your research, look at images like this, get out to the field and find some plants. Use the tool that I added in the description. It's in the description of all these wild edible plant series, where you can take it to Reddit, take a picture of a plant in the field, take that picture to Reddit and ask what kind of plant it is, and usually you're going to find some pretty good help there, finding answers for what kind of plants you're finding in the field. I would advise just going out and doing this with a ton of plants. Go out and find some plants that, I mean, the edible plants, they all have a tendency to have a more green, soft leaf on them, especially the small ones. So don't go out and just start randomly eating things, but take pictures of plants that in your intuition, in your gut, you think they might be edible, and take them to that what is this plant subreddit, a picture of them, and ask questions and get some answers. So, well, that's it for this series, and on to the next one. Shalom.